In the summer of 1986, a father and his 9-year-old daughter drove into the Blue Ridge Mountains for a weekend camping trip and vanished. Days later, their pickup was found abandoned beside a burned-down hunting cabin. No bodies, no signs of a struggle, just ash, charred stone, and silence. 38 years later, a park ranger repairing a collapsed trail uncovers something sealed beneath the ruins. A root cellar, and inside, a fireproof lockbox that was never meant to be found. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button if you love cold case mysteries, hidden places, and psychological thrillers that unravel layer by layer. March 9th, 2024. Location: Burke County, North Carolina. The shovel struck something solid. Park Ranger Elise Granger paused, brushing away dirt with gloved hands. She had been clearing debris from a landslide-prone ridge near Burnt Hollow Trailhead, long abandoned, rarely visited. Beneath the packed soil was stone, not natural, not like the boulders that littered the mountain. She crouched, scraping carefully. What emerged was unmistakable. Mortared bricks, weathered, scorched, sealed around a rusted iron ring embedded in what appeared to be a trap door. The collapsed forest floor had hidden it for decades, and now it had split open. Elise reached for her radio, breath caught in her throat. "Dispatch, I think I found something under the old cabin site." July 14th, 1986. Location: Blue Ridge Mountains, North Carolina. The pickup truck sat crooked at the edge of the gravel road, one tire half buried in a rut, like it had rolled to a stop and never moved again. Sheriff Alan Boyd climbed out of his cruiser and adjusted his hat against the rising heat. Summer cicadas screamed through the pines. The mountain air was thick with sap and the faint metallic scent of scorched timber. Behind him, Deputy Marie Latimer stood in the dust, squinting at the forest that crowded the road's edge. The truck, a '78 Ford F-150, was empty. No keys, no bags, no signs of struggle, just silence. A cooler sat in the bed, still latched shut. The passenger window was halfway down. A pink windbreaker, child-sized, hung from the back of the seat. Alan rubbed his jaw. "This the Halbrook truck?" he asked. Marie checked the license plate on her notepad. "Yeah, matches what Janice Halbrook gave us. Said her husband took their daughter up here to camp Saturday morning. That was 2 days ago. She said they were supposed to be back last night." Alan looked down the embankment. Through the trees, barely visible in the distance, was the skeletal frame of what had once been a hunting cabin. The roof was gone, blackened beams pointing like ribs toward the sky. Crows circled overhead. "There was a fire," Marie said. "Recently? Looks like a day, maybe less. Forest Service might have more." Alan nodded and started down the slope. The pine needles were slick underfoot, and the heat pressed in tighter the farther they descended. It wasn't until they reached the ruins that he smelled it. Something bitter beneath the charcoal and wet ash. Something human. The cabin was a ruin of stone and timber. The fireplace was still standing, a lone chimney like a grave marker. Burned tin cans littered the hearth. Bits of melted plastic clung to blackened beams. Marie circled around the far side and called out, "Over here." Alan stepped carefully over a collapsed wall and joined her. She stood at the edge of a scorched clearing. Near her boots, the ground was dark, sunken, stained. The remnants of what might have been cloth clung to the soil. A melted zipper. Something small and round, scorched black but unmistakable. A child's shoe. Marie crouched down, careful not to disturb the scene. She used a pen to lift what was left of the fabric. There was something red beneath it. Plastic. "Lunchbox," she said quietly. Alan stared at it. The metal edges were warped. A faded sticker of Rainbow Bright peeled from the lid. "Janice said Lucia was 9, he asked. Marie nodded. "Yeah, packed lunch, water bottles. They were just going for the weekend. Doesn't look like they made it past Saturday." Alan stood in the middle of the blackened shell and turned slowly. No bodies, no obvious signs of violence, but something about the way the cabin burned felt wrong. The fire hadn't spread beyond its frame. The surrounding trees were untouched, contained, controlled. He looked at the fireplace again. "There's no body here," he muttered. "Just remnants." Marie looked up. "So what do you think?" "I think someone wanted us to think they died here," Alan said. "But I don't see bones, no human remains, no heat signature of a flash burn. This fire was hot, but too clean." Marie frowned. "You think they staged it?" "I think we need to call the arson investigator and get K9 units up here." He took another slow glance around the clearing. "And someone needs to notify Janice Halbrook. In Austin, 2 hours south of the mountains." Janice Halbrook stood at the kitchen sink staring into the yard, clutching the edge of the counter. Her sister, Beth, sat at the table behind her, slowly flipping through Lucia's coloring books like they were sacred texts. "They're just late," Beth said softly. "You know Jim. He loses track of time up there. They were supposed to be back last night." Janice's voice was flat. "I called his sister, the dental office. No one's heard anything." "What about that ranger post he always checked in at?" "Left a message." "No response yet." Beth stood and crossed to her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe the truck broke down." Janice didn't reply. Her eyes were fixed on the swing set in the yard. Lucia's shoes were still on the porch. A Tupperware of grape jelly sandwiches sat untouched in the fridge. She had packed them that morning. She had kissed her daughter goodbye on the cheek. Jim had promised they'd be back by Sunday dinner. Instead, her house was quiet, still. And when the phone rang, she knew before she picked it up that the silence had changed. Back in Burke County, the forensics team arrived by mid-afternoon. They combed the cabin site with gloved hands and metal probes. 2 K9 officers searched the perimeter. One of the dogs picked up a scent trail north of the cabin, but it faded within 30 yards near a set of tire tracks in the dirt. Alan crouched beside a technician examining the fire pit remains. Charcoal, burned paper, a fragment of what looked like a license plate. Another technician held up a charred thermos and a scorched denim jacket. "There's no body here," she confirmed. "No bone fragments. If anyone was inside when this burned, they weren't in here long." Alan looked again at the child's shoe. It sat in a plastic evidence bag now, one lace missing, the rubber toe warped from heat. Marie joined him with a clipboard. Fire marshal says the blaze started near the fireplace. No accelerant residue, but controlled burn pattern. Could have been intentional. Anything from the canine? Just those tracks. And something else. She nodded toward the trees. We found a cigarette pack, old, but not from the Holbrooks. No prints yet. Alan stood and looked at the ruined cabin, his expression tightening. Something happened here, he said. But whatever it was, someone tried damn hard to make it disappear. March 10th, 2024. Location: Burnt Hollow Trail, Blue Ridge Mountains, North Carolina. The wind whistled through the trees as Ranger Elise Granger crouched near the ruined hearth, her gloved fingers brushing ash from the edge of the trap door. What she'd uncovered yesterday felt like a secret the mountain never meant to give up. A hidden stone structure sealed with mortar, iron-ringed like a storm shelter. She hadn't slept. Not really. Just replayed the moment over and over. The scrape of the shovel, the give of the soil, the clang of metal on brick. Now, with her sight temporarily closed and law enforcement on standby, she waited for the local fire marshal and crime scene team to arrive. She hadn't told them everything. Not yet. Not until she could confirm what she saw this morning after returning with a crowbar and flashlight. There was something inside. She stood as she heard the approach of boots through brush. Sheriff Rebecca Lane, a stern woman with crow's feet and sharp instincts, emerged from the trees alongside a young evidence tech hauling a case of tools. "You're the one who called it in?" Lane asked, eyeing the scorched remnants of the long-burned cabin. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Elise Granger. Been patrolling this ridge 5 years. That cabin's just a skeleton now. Locals call it Devil's Elbow. No one's come up here in decades, not since—" She stopped herself. Lane looked her over. "Not since the Holbrook case." Elise nodded. "Didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I found this." She led the sheriff across the brittle black flooring and pointed to the exposed trap door. It was sealed, deep, but when the earth collapsed last week after rain, part of it gave out. Lane studied the structure carefully. "This wasn't part of the original cabin, was it?" Number Y checked ranger maps from the 1950s. No mention of a cellar. Not even a root storage pit. Whoever built this didn't want it found. The sheriff knelt, her flashlight beam slipping through a crack where Elise had already pried a stone loose. "What's inside?" she asked. "I didn't open it fully," Elise said, "but enough to see the corner of a box. Fireproof, military style. I didn't touch it." Lane stood and nodded to the tech. "Let's get it open. Carefully." It took 20 minutes. With tools and caution, they lifted the sealed hatch, revealing a short ladder descending into darkness. The air that escaped was dry, ancient, and laced with mildew and rust. Lane went down first. Elise followed. The cellar was no wider than 10 feet, a square tomb of rock and packed dirt. Old canned goods sat in decayed crates. A rusted lantern hung from a nail, At the far corner, partially covered by a mildewed tarp, was the lockbox, black, heavy, fireproof. Lane brushed away debris and ran her gloved hand along the latches. "No heat damage," she muttered. "This thing survived untouched." She popped the latches. The lid creaked open. Inside was a stack of items, dry, organized. Time capsules. Elise knelt closer. There was a Polaroid photograph on top, its edges curled slightly. She leaned in. A little girl. Long brown hair. Barefoot on a stone porch, smiling with her arms wrapped around a man with a thick mustache and sunburned skin. "They match," Elise whispered. "That's Lucia Halbrook and her dad." Lane said nothing for a long time. She was staring at what lay beneath the photo. A spiral notebook, the cover warped from pressure. Written in pen across the top, "For whoever finds this, July 15th, 1986. Back in Austin, Margaret Halbrook gripped her tea mug with trembling hands. Her name hadn't been Margaret in years. She went by Janice now, her middle name. A quiet shift she made after the grief threatened to unmake her. After Jim and Lucia vanished. After the cabin burned and everyone stopped calling. She never remarried, never left the house Jim built for them, and never stopped looking. When the call came that morning, she almost didn't answer. The number was unfamiliar. The voice was calm, professional. "Mrs. Halbrook, I'm Sheriff Rebecca Lane out of Burke County. We found something in connection to your husband and daughter's case. We'd like to ask you to come identify it in person." Margaret's hands had gone numb. She could barely hold the pen to write down the directions. And when she called her sister Doris, all she could say was, "It's about Lucia." 3 hours later, they were winding their way up a mountain road in a sheriff's vehicle. Margaret sat in the back seat beside Doris, her knuckles white around her purse strap. She hadn't been this far north in almost 40 years. "Do you remember that weekend?" Doris asked gently. "All of it." Margaret's voice was firm. "Jim packed the cooler. I braided Lucia's hair. She made me promise we'd go get blueberry pancakes when they got back." Doris didn't reply. She reached over and took her sister's hand. Ahead, the cruiser pulled into a clearing beside a ranger's truck. Yellow tape flapped lazily in the breeze around the collapsed ruins. The cabin, or what remained of it, stood like a memory burned into the mountain. Elise Granger met them at the edge of the trail. "I'm sorry for the circumstances," she said, voice quiet but steady. "But I think it's time someone knew what was buried here." She led them carefully across the burned flooring to the edge of the opened cellar. When Sheriff Lane handed Margaret the Polaroid, her breath caught in her throat. "That was the porch at the cabin," she whispered. "Lucia had just lost a tooth. She was so proud of that gap." Her voice trembled, and Jim, he looks like he was trying to stay strong for her. Beneath the photo was the spiral notebook. Elise offered it to her. "We haven't read it yet. We thought it should be you." Margaret took it slowly. The first page was smudged at the corner but still legible. "If you're reading this, we didn't make it out. My name is Jim Halbrook. My daughter is Lucia. She's 9. We've been hiding for 2 days from a man who followed us up here. I think he meant to hurt us. I've locked us in this cellar. I've sealed it the best I can. I don't know if anyone will find us, but if you do, please tell my wife I tried." Margaret's legs nearly gave out. Doris caught her before she fell. July 13th, 1986. Location: Burnt Hollow Cabin, Blue Ridge Mountains. Jim Holbrook sat on the porch of the old hunting cabin, sweat sliding down his neck as he watched the trees shift in the breeze. The late afternoon light broke through the pines in amber shards, casting long shadows across the ridge. The air was warm, damp, and strangely quiet. No bird song, no wind. Just the rhythmic creak of the porch swing where Lucia sat, humming softly as she flipped through her paperback. She wore her pink tank top and striped shorts, legs dangling, toes dusty. Her rainbow-bright lunchbox sat beside her. She hadn't touched her sandwich. Jim took a slow sip from his canteen, his eyes scanning the trail beyond the clearing. Something about today felt off. He'd noticed it that morning. A strange sound in the woods, footsteps where there shouldn't have been any, a flash of movement through the trees. He'd told himself it was nothing, a deer maybe, a squirrel. But now, hours later, his unease hadn't lifted. "You doing okay, Peanut?" he asked. Lucia nodded, eyes still on her book. "It's hot. Want to dip your feet in the creek again?" She shook her head. Too many bugs. He smiled and stood, brushing dust from his jeans. "I'll go gather kindling. We'll get a little fire going, make some hot dogs. Maybe s'mores." Lucia perked up at that. "Can I toast mine this time?" "You bet." He ruffled her hair and stepped off the porch, boots crunching through leaves as he made his way behind the cabin. That's when he saw it. A boot print. Deep. Not his, not Lucia's. Large, heavy, and fresh. He crouched, tracing the edges of the print with one finger. Then he looked up, heart thudding. On the far tree trunk, faint but there, was a mark, scraped into the bark, 3 vertical lines. He turned back toward the cabin, his voice steady but low. "Lucia, come inside." She looked up. "Why?" "Now, sweetheart, please." Something in his tone made her obey. She stood, lunchbox in hand, and moved through the screen door. Jim followed, locking it behind him. Inside, the cabin was dark and cool. One room, old cot in the corner, a wood stove against the wall. He pulled the curtains closed, heart hammering in his chest. "Daddy, what's wrong?" He crouched down to her level, hands on her shoulders. "Nothing bad, okay? I saw someone near the trail. I think they're lost. But just in case, we're gonna stay inside for a bit." Lucia looked worried. "You think they're scary?" Jim hesitated. Then he nodded. "Maybe." That night, Jim didn't sleep. He sat in the wooden chair by the stove, rifle across his lap, ears tuned to every creak of the cabin. Lucia had curled up in her sleeping bag beside him, thumb in her mouth, her other hand gripping his shirt. Sometime after midnight, it began. The creaking, the soft crunch of feet on pine needles, then the knock. One knock, just one. Jim stood slowly, moved toward the window. He saw a figure just beyond the tree line, not moving, just standing. He raised the rifle and shouted, "Get out of here! I'm armed!" No response. "Lucia, get your things," he said quietly. "We're leaving." He opened the trap door to the root cellar, a feature he'd found only by chance, half buried beneath pine needles behind the cabin. It was small but secure, reinforced stone. No one would find them down there unless they knew it was there. Lucia looked confused. "Are we hiding?" "Just for a little while." He lowered her in first, then followed, pulling the heavy hatch closed behind them. The world above faded into silence. In the notebook, the next entry was written in shakier handwriting. "We've been down here all night. I heard him walking around up there. He tried the door, tried the window, but he never spoke, never made a sound. He's still out there, I can feel it. I don't know how long we can stay here. I left food up top, just water down here now. Lucia's being brave, but she's scared. I keep telling her we're camping in a secret fort." She smiled. "But it's fading. If someone finds this, he's still out there. I don't know who he is, but he followed us, and he's waiting." July 14th, 1986. The last note. He set fire to the cabin. I saw the smoke through the crack in the trap door. We could hear the wood crackling. The smoke came in slow, then fast. I stuffed towels in the corners. We barely breathed. Lucia cried for an hour, then fell asleep in my arms. She's still breathing. I don't know what kind of man burns a place down without checking if anyone's inside. I think he thought we ran, or he wanted to cover something up. We can't go up yet, not until morning. But if we don't make it, I need someone to know I did everything I could. For her. My name is Jim Halbrook. My daughter is Lucia. And we didn't leave. We hid. We survived the fire. And we're still here. March 10th, 2024. Location: Burnt Hollow Root Cellar, Blue Ridge Mountains. The light was fading fast by the time Sheriff Lane and Elise finished photographing every angle of the root cellar. The Polaroid and spiral notebook had already been logged, sealed in evidence bags, and secured in the ranger's truck. Margaret and Doris had returned to the ranger station with a deputy for warmth and rest, but neither woman had spoken much on the ride back. Elise remained behind, uneasy. She crouched again at the foot of the ladder, brushing soot from the cellar's far corner where the earth had collapsed slightly, exposing a shallow cavity beneath what had once been a support beam. Something caught the beam of her flashlight. Fabric, color. "Elise," Lane called from above. "What are you doing?" "There's something else," Elise replied, reaching in with gloved fingers. "I think it's—" She pulled it free slowly, gently. It was a child's handbag, small, rectangular, baby blue with white trim. The plastic surface was streaked with soot, but otherwise intact. A melted patch of vinyl had warped the strap. The clasp was rusted, but when Elise opened it, the interior was clean, dry. Inside was a folded piece of notebook paper. A Barbie sticker, sun-faded, clung to the corner. She passed it up to Lane. "Another message." Lane unfolded it. The handwriting was childlike, messy but legible. If you find this, my name is Lucia Halbrook. My daddy is with me. We are hiding from the man in the trees. I don't want to die. Please tell my mommy I was good. I didn't cry. Lane swallowed hard. Elise blinked rapidly. She was writing goodbye. There's more in the bag, Lane said quietly. Elise turned it upside down. A small plastic barrette clattered into her palm. A stub of pink crayon. And then something heavier. A cassette tape. Half melted. Warped slightly along one edge, but still labeled. Lucia, July 12th. Lane turned it over in her gloved hand. You think there's anything still on it? I know a guy, Elise said. Works at a wildlife audio lab in Boone. If anyone can recover it, he can. Lane slid the tape into a separate evidence pouch. Have it processed immediately, she said. Chain of custody starts with you. As they climbed out of the cellar, Elise paused and looked back into the darkness one last time. She could still feel the chill. Still hear the scratch of dried roots against stone. Still imagine the sound of a child whispering goodbye to a world she thought would never find her. March 11th, 2024. Boone Wildlife Audio Lab. The building looked more like a bunker than a research facility. Cinder block walls, no windows, humming with white noise from within. Elise handed the cassette tape to Dr. Brennan Kessler, a field audio specialist and longtime acquaintance from her time in forestry. This thing looks like it went through hell, he said, inspecting it with tweezers. It did. And if there's anything you can do to salvage the audio, I need it. Brennan raised an eyebrow. What's on it? A child's voice, Elise said. From 1986, a missing girl. We found it yesterday. He nodded, more serious now. I'll get it baked and transferred. Give me 90 minutes. 2 hours later, Elise sat with headphones pressed to her ears in the dim sound booth. Brennan watched her through the glass as the digitized waveform played on the screen. She didn't move, didn't blink, just listened. Inside the tape, the past spoke back. Tape begins, static clicks. Lucia, whispering. My name is Lucia Halbrook. I'm 9. I'm hiding with my dad in the basement under the cabin. He says not to talk loud, but I'm scared. We heard the man again. He was outside. He had something metal in his hand. Daddy says it's not safe to go up. He said we'll stay here one more night. He's gonna block the air holes so the smoke doesn't get in. Long pause. Lucia breathes quietly. Mommy, I hope you're not crying. I was brave. I was brave, Daddy said. I'm gonna keep my lunchbox in case we get out. Okay. I'm turning this off now. I love you, Mommy. Click. Tape ends.